Sorry, my apologies, just recording the session. So if you're a member today, don't forget that we are doing passports. So if you want to mail your passport in after this or take a photo of it and send it, this counts as a passport day. And for all your members out there who are not members yet, welcome. We're so excited to have you, and we hope that you'll think about being part of our community. I'm recording this session today, so if you're not comfortable with that, please make sure that you turn off your cameras. Michelle will share her screen in a moment, so that will kind of become the main screen for you to look at. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll have lots of time throughout the session to take them, and we'll stop throughout the morning if you have questions, and maybe you can unmute yourselves and ask them in the chat as well. So we should have lots of time for that. Yeah, we're just so happy to be here this morning. So I'm gonna turn it over to Michelle to take it over from here.
Great, thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming and meeting with us today. I'll get my screen going here and we can dive right in. Let me just... There we go. Is that working?
Looks good.
Okay, cool. So today is all about Taylor's Checkerspot butterflies, and I'll introduce what my role is. I work full-time with this species for Wildlife Preservation Canada, and my job is to raise and breed these butterflies in captivity. So I actually do that at a zoo, the Greater Vancouver Zoo here in Aldergrove. And so my full-time job is basically to make more butterflies. So I'm going to be talking all about that today. So I want to start off with a bunch of big words. I know if there's some kids watching, they are really good at big words. So the first one is invertebrates. That's the group of animals that butterflies belong in. And that means that they don't have a spine. So if you reach behind you and feel in the middle of your back, all those bones, that's your spine. Butterflies don't have one of those. Instead, they have an exoskeleton. The smaller group they belong in is insects. Insects always have 6 legs. That's an important characteristic, and that might come in handy later. And the smaller group that butterflies belong in is the group of insects they're in is called Lepidoptera. So Lepidoptera can be broken into 2 words. It means scaly wings. And you know that they have scaly wings. If you've ever touched a moth or a butterfly and then you had dust on your finger, that's actually the scales on their wings. And if you are to look at them through a microscope, it looks something like this. So this is actually a photo I took of a super zoomed in Taylor's Checkerspot wing. And you can see all of those little spots. Those are the scales on their wing. And the scales give it color and make it so that a butterfly can fly. They add some lift when they flap their wings. So why are we talking about Taylor's Checkerspots? What makes this butterfly special is that this butterfly is actually an endangered species. So that means there aren't very many left. They're really close to going, they could go extinct in our lifetime if we don't work really hard to save them. And the reason they're disappearing is because a lot of their habitat has been converted to other things like farmland or roads or houses or parking lots and so on. So their habitat is grasslands along the coast of BC. And historically, Taylor's Checkerspots would have lived on Vancouver Island all the way down from about Comox to Victoria, and you would have seen them commonly. But right now, they only live in 2 places. They only live on Denman Island, and a couple still live near Comox. So they're really close to disappearing from our country, and that's why we're talking about them. There's lots of people working on saving them. They're doing lots of habitat restoration and so on, and we'll talk more about that later. So we'll get to my job. Here are a few of the animals that I work with, And they're in a mesh cage here, and this is one of the days in the summer when we're working on making more butterflies. So let's dive into exactly how we do all of that. It all begins when a female lays some eggs. So let's see, I have a video here. If you look closely, you can see this is a female checkerspot, and she's actually laying eggs on the underside of a leaf as we watch. And this isn't just any leaf. This leaf is actually the favorite food of this butterfly species. So these eggs are laid right onto these caterpillars that they'll hatch into their favorite food.
Michelle, can I interrupt you just for one quick sec? Would you be able to just turn your mic up a tiny bit? Just getting a few comments that you're a bit hard to hear.
Yeah, let me see if I can. Is this a little better?
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. So this female has laid eggs on the bottom of a leaf, as they usually do. And here's what they look like. They're teeny tiny. So that's my finger. So you can imagine you could fit hundreds just on the tip of your finger. They're so small. After a few days, the eggs start to change color. First they turn brown. So those brown ones are a little older. And later they'll turn red. And as time goes by, after a couple of weeks, they actually become clear. And you can see inside of these eggs, you can actually see the tiny caterpillars developing. So I think we have a poll question here. If you can throw up that first one that's about eggs.
Sure thing.
So we have a poll question. How many eggs do you think a female Taylor's checker spot butterfly can lay? I'll give you a clue. In that last picture, those yellow, red, and brown eggs were all laid by the same female. So you can choose how many you think she can lay here. And then I'll let you throw up the results when you're ready.
Just give it a few more seconds.
Sure.
Is everybody, everybody in the chat just say a thumbs up or a thumbs down that you can see the poll? Interesting. Maybe you can put your answers in the chat rather than on the poll. For some reason, it's not coming through right now. If you just want to write in the chat, do you think it's 25 eggs, 50 eggs, 100 eggs, or 400 eggs? Oh, we got some 400s coming in.
Big numbers. Okay. I'll give it one more second. All right. So all of you, pretty good. No one said 25 or 50. And you're right. Females can lay up to 400 eggs out of their teeny tiny little butterfly body, which is so incredible. and they can lay 100 at a time. So that female that we saw depositing one egg after another, she might lay 100 in one afternoon, which is really so impressive. I don't know where they keep them inside their body, but amazing. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to close my presentation and show you a video of the eggs hatching. Here we are. Is that working? And here we go.
Yeah, that's good.
Great. So this is actually a time lapse. It's in fast forward, but the caterpillars are coming out of their tiny eggs and they're immediately getting to work. And their job as a caterpillar is to eat. So remember I said the female lays eggs right on their favorite food? So imagine if your favorite food was pizza. This would be like waking up on a giant pizza and immediately starting to eat the bed you woke up on. And that's basically what the caterpillars do. So eating and growing is their main job. So I'll switch back to the presentation now. Here we go. So as they eat, they grow, and they actually shed their skin many times. So unlike you and I, we get taller, maybe we have to get new clothes. The caterpillars actually have an exoskeleton on the outside of their body. And as they get bigger, they have to shed that exoskeleton, and they have another exoskeleton ready to go that's a little bigger underneath. So they do that about 6 times. So they eat and grow and eat and grow. You can see these guys. And they also hang out in a group. So they're all hanging out with their siblings right now. And I have another video. Bear with me. Here we go. And these caterpillars are the same species. This is the same group of caterpillars, a little bit older and bigger. And they're all out together with their siblings, and they're actually basking in the sun. So part of my job every day is to take the caterpillars outside so they can bask in the sun and warm up. They need that heat to get moving. And if you look at the bottom of this video down here, near the bottom of the screen, you can actually see what looks like a tiny caterpillar, like a very short one, but that's actually just an old skin. So that's a shed skin, and the caterpillar just crawled right out of it, and now it's a bigger, fluffier caterpillar. You'll also see lots of black dots, and those black dots are actually frass. And that was going to be a poll question, but maybe we'll just do it in the chat. But what do you think frass is? Do you want to guess and type in the chat what frass could be? It's all these black dots around here. So it was a multiple choice question. The possible answers I don't have right in front of me. Could you say what they
I can
are?
read them out. Yeah.
Thank you.
So do you think it's poop? Do you think it's part of a leaf? Do you think it's a measurement of stress in the captive animals? Or do you think it's a skin that a caterpillar has shed? I'll launch the poll and put the questions up for you to have a look. It's multiple choice, just the answers weren't recording properly for some reason. So if you just type your answer in the chat. We got lots of poop answers, almost unanimous across the board.
Oh, smarties, good. Yeah, okay. Frass is insect poop. So anytime an insect poops, that's called frass. And something pretty interesting that these caterpillars do is they actually fling their frass. So if you have them in a small container, their poop won't appear right next to them. It actually will appear on the other side of the container. And I've seen different species of caterpillars do that. They will flick their poo, and it actually helps to protect them. So imagine if you're a caterpillar, you're eating all day. That's a lot of frass. And if you just let it all fall, there will be a pile of frass right under where you're eating. And birds who love to eat caterpillars could use that as a clue to find you. So it'd be smarter to spread it out. So a lot of caterpillars that I've seen fling their frass around, and these guys do it too. Okay, I'll get you back on that presentation. Can you see it? Did that work?
I'm still seeing the video.
Okay. Here we go. Is that better?
Yeah, looks good.
Great. Okay, so they eat and shed their skin and make a lot of frass all summer. It's a lot of work getting them all the leaves that they need. And eventually in about early August, late July, they go to sleep. So my caterpillars actually went to sleep in late July and they're still sleeping right now. It's called diapause. And they basically curl up, make a little web with their siblings, and they stay in their web all winter. So I don't actually have to interact with them very much right now. They're all just sleeping among paper towels. It looks just like this. And this is pretty awesome. So in the spring, hopefully all my caterpillars will wake up and they'll start eating again. And then they'll do the thing that they're most famous for. And that is to pupate or make their chrysalis. So I have a video of that happening for you. And this is sped up as well, but so basically they shed their caterpillar skin one final time, and instead of coming out as a caterpillar this time, they come out as a chrysalis. And you can start to see the body parts that are going to make up this butterfly when it emerges. So the chrysalis is a whole different life form, stage of life than the caterpillar. Inside of this chrysalis, this animal is basically just goo right now, rearranging itself. So really fascinating. So that's sped up, of course, but I think that's where alien movies get all their ideas, is from insects, because it's so incredible. So they'll make their chrysalis, and this chrysalis stage lasts about 2 weeks as well. And I want to show you some really neat things we noticed about their chrysalises this year. Oh, sorry. So here's a close-up of the chrysalis after it has hardened a little bit over the next day. It gets a little brighter and more solid. It has these beautiful dots. And it's actually, you can see the butterfly body parts. So here are the wings, what will be the wings, spiracles. So that's actually what the breathing holes of an insect are called. So you can see these dots are actually holes. And this is going to be the butterfly's face. So we're looking at the front top of that chrysalis now. You can see these striped long bits are going to be the antennas, and the arms are actually all curled up along the front, sort of like this as well. I should say they're legs, not arms. But. And the base of the chrysalis has this amazing feature that works a lot like Velcro. So there's a sort of stick that comes out of it, and it gets tangled into this little web of silk that actually was put there by the caterpillar. So the caterpillar somehow knows it's going to become a chrysalis, lays down a web of silk, a lot like a little bit of a spider web. And then when it becomes a chrysalis, this pokey, scratchy sort of thing, stick covered in hooks, comes out and gets tangled in that web. And that's how a chrysalis is able to hang. So there's no glue. They actually do it using a tangle of silk. And lots of butterflies use this same technique. And then after a couple weeks, like I said, it's time to come out and be a butterfly. So here's an adult, and this butterfly just emerged from its chrysalis just seconds before I started taking this video. So they come out and they have a few things they need to get in order. So first they need to unfurl their wings, and they pump them full of fluids in all the little veins of the wing. They're pumping fluids and expanding and drying the wings. And they also need to get their mouth parts organized. So they have a proboscis, and you'll see this butterfly is moving its little mouth parts. And the proboscis actually comes out in two, and as they emerge, they have to kind of zip the two halves together to make the straw type of mouth they use to drink nectar. So they emerge, And our adult butterflies, this is what they look like. Here's one of my beautiful male butterflies. Now the blue spots, those were not natural. I drew those on with marker. We do that actually to keep track of individual butterflies. So this butterfly had a name, but this is a really cool picture. You can see his compound eye there. And you can see he's actually got his proboscis extended and he's drinking. So what he's drinking is a solution of honey and water, and that's what we feed our adult butterflies while they're here with us. He's got gorgeous orange antennas as well. Here's a whole group of males, all feeding on, well, most of them are feeding on Q-tips. And in the morning, I bring them all outside into the sunshine to warm up. That's why their wings are open. They're trying to absorb some sun and have a drink. And this is what it looks like at the zoo. So they all have access to honey to drink, and they're actually, these cages all have groups of males in them waiting for a female to be introduced, because we need them to breed. Ideally, this is what we want to see. So these butterflies are actually breeding, and the one that's hanging is a male, and the one that's holding on to the top of the tent is a female. So he's kind of doing a Superman pose, and that means we're going to get some eggs soon. So that's great news. We love to see that. And then the completion of the cycle is that that female will lay more eggs, and those caterpillars that they make actually get released onto Hornby Island. So Hornby Island is a place where checkerspots used to live. They don't anymore, but now the caterpillars that come out of the zoo that I raise get released on Hornby, and we're starting a new population of this butterfly where it used to live. So it's been a very big project. A lot of people have been involved and helped make that possible. So hopefully if you ever go to Hornby Island, you'll see Taylor's checkerspots flying. If you go in late May, that's when they fly. So I'll show you what it looks like a day in the life at my job, and I'll do it in fast motion, don't worry. But it's a lot of picking up cups and checking on caterpillars and giving them fresh leaves and so on. And here was a day where they were starting to make their chrysalis. So once they do that, they have to be given a name and moved over. And we work inside the zoo, and actually just inside of a tiny shed. So very fancy work environment. So now I want to talk about the really fun stuff about butterflies. And this is this kind of stuff can apply to all kinds of butterflies and moths that you see around your house as well. So I want to talk a little bit about what they look like and why. So people, you might ask, why is the Taylor's checkerspot's camouflage so terrible? So if you look at this butterfly, it's orange and black and white. It's pretty obvious. If one flew by, you would likely notice. So we're going to talk about the different techniques they're using. So one of them is called mimicry. Let's look at an example. So here is on the right is a Taylor's checkerspot chrysalis. And on the left is what I think they're trying to disguise themselves as, which is actually bird poo. So if you don't want a bird to eat you, which is why they're using mimicry, they don't want to be eaten because insects make a really good snack for a bird. A good idea would be to look like a bird poo, because that's not something birds are looking for when they're looking for snacks. So the chrysalis looks a lot like a bird poo on the leaf. Another technique they're using, here's another big word for you, is aposematism. Aposematism, you'll start to see it everywhere in nature after we talk about it. So does anyone know what butterfly this is? Do you want to type in the chat maybe? There's another, this orange butterfly on the right hand side of your screen. Does anyone know?
We got some monarch answers coming in.
You're right. That's great. So this is a monarch, and they're another obvious orange and black and white butterfly. And the tailless checker spots are also orange, black, and white. So they're using the same colors, and they're communicating something to birds with those colors. And what they're telling birds is actually, I'll probably make you throw up if you eat me. So a monarch is toxic to birds because of the plants that it eats as a caterpillar. And tailless checker spots also are toxic to birds. So they're using the same color code to say, don't try anything. I'm not a snack. You won't enjoy it if you eat me. So lots of different animals use this. If you ever see on milkweed red and black beetles, they're using the same sort of code to say, don't eat me, don't bother. So lots of times, especially in the insect world, if they're a really bright color, especially orange, they're trying to tell birds that they will make them throw up if they try to eat them. So that's the aposematism the tailless checker spots are using. Same as the monarchs. Oh, and I wanted to ask one more question, actually. We'll do this in the chat too, you can answer. So remember we saw those caterpillars crawling around and we saw that adult butterfly. How many legs does an insect have? You can answer in the chat. Getting 6 and 6. Anyone else want to answer? That's good. There's the caterpillar says 6 as well. That's funny. That's really good. Okay, so you weren't fooled. But I did show you some pictures where it didn't look like they only had 6 legs. In the pictures of caterpillars and the videos, the caterpillars actually have, it looks like many legs all along their body. But the trick is only the front 3 count, and the back legs are kind of like suction cups more than legs. So they're called pro legs. And the adult butterflies, I think I showed you one that only had 4 legs showing. And that's because the front 2 legs are really tiny. They kind of use them like parts of their mouth more than legs, but they still count. So you're right, always 6, always. We just have a few cheats to get around that rule. And I think that leaves us some time for questions, if anyone has any.
You can put your question in the chat, or if you want, you can unmute yourself as well and ask it live.
What are the food plants? That's a good question. So in the wild, the tailless checker spot eat a few different kinds of scutellata, which is sort of a wetland plant. And in captivity, they actually eat plantain. So you might be really familiar with plantain. It actually grows in people's lawns, in people's driveways. It's sort of a weed that grows everywhere, and it's a plant that this species has evolved to be able to also eat. So we grow plantain and feed that to them. The name of the island where they live right now is called Denman Island and near Comox, and the new population we're starting is on Hornby Island in Hallowell Provincial Park on Hornby. And the predators of this animal are, for the most part, birds and also other insects. So the insect world is full of danger, and spiders could eat the caterpillars. Wasps sometimes lay their eggs on the caterpillars and let their larvae eat the caterpillars. But for the most part, those are the predators. Oh, you've had... So someone said that their family raised butterflies last summer, but half came out with deformed wings and couldn't fly, and they're wondering about that. Can you type what species of butterfly you raised? Painted ladies. Okay. I haven't raised those, but I'm sure Did they have a place when they came out to be able to hang and dry their wings, sort of like the one in the video? How can I help? That's a good question. I'll answer that one in just a second. So I'm at the Greater Vancouver Zoo, which is located just outside of Aldergrove, and they help us by hosting us there. So we work at Conservation Corner within the zoo, and someone asked if they could see the program in person, and you can if you come to the zoo, but because of COVID-19, you can't actually come in. But if you were to come in like late May, early June, especially in May, you'll see the butterflies flying, and you'll see me there working outside and arranging all the breeding and so on, and feeding them every day. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that person who raised painted ladies. Okay, so some seem to get stuck in their chrysalis. That does happen. I had one this summer have that. But if you had a bunch that happened to, it could have been a genetic problem. They might have all been from the same mom, and maybe they had an issue. Just check. I would check online about like what humidity they need, how humid it can be. Sometimes that's important when they come out of their chrysalis. That'll be my suggestion. Okay, I'm gonna scroll up. I think there's a few more questions that I zoomed over. How can I help them? Okay, I wanna talk about this one. So you can help all insects, and this is actually important. Almost all insects are in decline. That means there's less and less insects because humans are so good at changing our environment. So the most important thing you can do is, if you have a yard and you're a gardener or you like to mow the lawn, is to be more lazy. So if you can leave piles of brush in your yard, if you can leave it a little messy, and if you can grow plants that are native to this area, because insects from here only use plants from here. So it's all connected. So anytime you can plant a native species of tree or flower or grass, that's better than something that's not from here. And that's the best way you can help insects. The Taylor's checker spots themselves, because there's so few left, it's hard to be hands-on with them, but a good idea is always to stay on paths if you're in a provincial park. For example, in Hellawell Provincial Park, where these caterpillars are going to be released, there's paths and they're roped off, and if you can stay on the path, that'll keep from crushing caterpillars before they get to become butterflies. I'm going to scroll down. I hope that was helpful. And what's the difference between a monarch butterfly and a Taylor's checker spot? So they're two different species. The monarchs are bigger, and you probably don't see monarchs out here in the Vancouver area. If you're seeing a big butterfly, it might be something more like, I'll show you. It's probably something more like swallowtail, like this. So
you just have to stop sharing your screen, Michelle, so we can see.
Oh, sorry. How's that? So good. If you were to see a big butterfly out here, it's probably a swallowtail and not a monarch. And yeah, the difference, there's a big difference in size. I have not a Taylor's checker spot, but another one. So they're much smaller. So you can see this is about the size of a monarch, and this is the size of a checker spot. Someone else is saying they raised butterflies in school. That's great. And how to ID a Taylor's checker spot. So they really do look like a checkerboard. They have black and white and orange dots, but a really good way to ID butterflies is to get a little guidebook. So I use guidebooks all the time. You can just make sure it's specific to this area. So I would ask at the bookstore about a BC butterfly guidebook, and that's a great way to get started. You guys have some really beautiful butterflies in this province. The Taylor's checker spot, do they live elsewhere in the world? Yes, they do. They live in Washington and Oregon as well, but they're also very endangered there. So there's actually someone in the United States that has the same job as me. So there's someone in Oregon, who also breeds these butterflies. So the two of us are both working in our separate countries to save the species. Do they live elsewhere in the world? Oh, sorry, that's one we just did. And someone said they've seen a checker spot. So that's great. So if you see a butterfly and if you see a checker spot, the best thing to do if you want to help the people who are working with them is to take a picture and to put it on to iNaturalist. So have you guys ever talked about iNaturalist before?
A little bit, but you can give an update.
Great. So that's the kind of tool that the people who work on Hornby or Denman or with Taylor's checker spots in the wild will use to see if the public is finding this butterfly in new places. So it's very helpful anytime you can, if you see an animal, if you can get a picture and put it on iNaturalist, scientists really do use that to find out where these species live. So for example, the Taylor's checker spots that live near Comox, we didn't know they existed until someone found them and told us. So that's a great way to tell scientists when you see something like this. It's called iNaturalist, and you can get it on your phone or computer. Yeah, and oh great, and someone posted some butterfly resources in the chat as well to help you ID butterflies if you want to, so that's great. Any other questions? I don't think I missed any.
I was just wondering how you'd came to become interested in this type of butterfly.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm interested in butterflies and moths in general. It sort of just happened. I happened to find the cocoon of a big moth near my house, and I raised that and it came out, and then I just kept finding big caterpillars and raising them. So it sort of started as a hobby. I've gone to school for biology as well, but for butterflies and moths, it just sort of was a hobby, and now I collect insects, and in the summertime I'll bring in caterpillars into my house and raise them. And it's always interesting because every species is a little bit different in how they develop. So just sort of happened, and then this job came up and now I'm here.
Amazing. Does anybody else have any more questions for Michelle? All right. Well, that's going to be a wrap for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We are continuing with our Virtual Explorer Days throughout the season. We're going to look at rocks and minerals and fossils in February. So stay alert for those announcements, and you can learn how to become junior rock hounds and learn all about the geology in your big backyards. Thanks again to Michelle so much for joining us and for sharing your love of butterflies with us. And have a great afternoon, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was so great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.